Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Hunt for Peace. I'm Dalton. This is Gary. We're here to talk to you about a little bit something special today. Not only is this Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, but it is also PTSD Awareness Month. So, with Gary being a veteran, we are going to kind of really dive deep into the PTSD side of things, what it's like living with PTSD, different factors that can affect PTSD, different things that can cause PTSD, and things like that. So that'll kind of be the main focus today. So I guess to kind of start, we'll throw out a couple facts. 6% of all Americans, so 3 in 50, 6 in 100, however you want to do the math, are diagnosed with PTSD. That may seem like a small number, but that is actually a very, very large number. Um, and it's not just veterans or people that have been to war. That is a very common misconception with PTSD, is that that's kind of the primary source of it. But any traumatic event that anyone is susceptible to or goes through can cause PTSD and severe lingering effects for years to come, and for some people, the entirety of their life. So living with that and working through that can be very, very difficult. So to kind of shimmy off of that, what is it like to live with PTSD?
Well, it's not fun, Dalton. It's not fun at all. He was talking about the ratio. 6% of Americans suffer from PTSD, but that number is 14 out of 100 males that served in the military, and 24 out of every 100 women that served in the military actually suffer from PTSD. And you're right, PTSD comes in all shapes, forms, and fashions.
Mm-hmm.
And you can have a major car wreck. And really, how they judge PTSD is after a traumatic event, you'll actually feel, the stress of it, and they usually, most people feel it for about a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then after a month, it starts getting better. Uh, you can pretty well tell, that you have PTSD when, a significant amount of time goes back and you still suffer and have, issues pop up because of what you went through.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really the defining tell. If you were to have a, you know, I'll use me, have a bad car wreck on the way home and I had no form of PTSD, I'm going to be shaken up. Every
Mm-hmm.
human would. But again, a lot of people, it's, about a month time, and their confidence back up, they're feeling better, injuries are,
Not worried when they're
better.
driving from there, just kind of go back
Right.
to a little bit of normalcy.
Oh, absolutely. So it becomes real when, a year later, you still have the same anxieties when a particular incident happens, and it's different for everybody. It just depends on, kind of what you went through. The 4th of July is coming up. I remember when Fourth of July is hard for me, and it's weird if I have the firework in my hand and
Mm-hmm.
I go out there, set it up, light it, boom, I have no problems because I was in control of that incident. But if I'm just sitting there out of the blue and my neighbor starts firing them off, there's a second that I have to catch myself because it's startling because it reminds me, of the sounds from combat. And something I learned and something you guys will learn. And one point I'm going to stop and make right here is because if you have PTSD and you have not got help with your PTSD, there are so many people out there that are going to help you. If you're a veteran, I cannot believe the different programs the VA has for that. They've got counseling, and I went through that and it helped a lot. Now they offer me yoga, they have music classes, art classes. They've got just about anywhere you can plug in to find a place to find peace. And I think sometimes that's what it is, especially when it's new and fresh. You're so, I hate the word, hypersensitive. You just have to put it in the right dialects, hypersensitive to what you went through.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you run, the best way to put it is, Dalton, you don't have PTSD.
I actually, after I was actually kind of going to go into
Oh,
that
that
after
ruins my example, but go ahead.
what I went through with the situation involving Hunter. That was actually one of the things that my therapist did diagnose me with was PTSD. Um, Now it's still very, very new to me. It's not something that I've had to navigate my entire life. That's something that's 4 months, some 4 months that I've kind of had to deal with. And it's something that I guess as new and fresh for me was a lot harder to navigate that first month or two. Um, Now it has gotten easier to deal with. There are flare ups, I guess, for a lack of better terms, the intrusive, invasive thoughts. Um, but one thing that helps me and has helped me is music. Music helps keep my mind distracted. So when I do kind of have those flare ups and those moments, that's to this point kind of what I've turned to kind of help navigate through those thoughts and those feelings and episodes, I guess, for a lack of better terms. Um, but again, kind of going back to what he was talking, there's a lot of different forms of it. Mine is very different than yours. Yours is combat induced. There's going to be different triggers. There's going to be different responses. There's going to be a different depth to the episodes. Not saying that mine or anyone else's is less significant or less important or anything of the sort, but it's going to show up different in every person and also different for every traumatic event that someone's been through.
Right. I've never been bit by a shark, but I assumed if I had, I'd get a little PTSD from that.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'd take me a long time if I would ever step back in the ocean. So it's all situational. But the point I was going to go to, and Dalton's a bad example. Sorry, Dalton. But people that normal people that don't have, PTSD or anything like that, they normally run, on an intensity level 3 to 4.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're around someone with PTSD, this is something important to keep in mind. They're already running 7 to 8. So when you experience something that makes you go to a 7, well, that PTSD vet, he just went to a 15. So life runs a little more intense for those guys. And it helps you to know that, okay, that's not who that person is, that's where he's at from what he or she went through. So, and that was the point I wanted to make on that is a lot of times, I'd be called intense. Well, I didn't have control over being intense. I was just, this energy ball is the best way to put it. And it's, it's all the emotions, the stress, the sounds, the smells, everything that you went through. And I would just come across as intense.
Now, how long was the experience to that degree before you kind of started to get control over it and have a little more ability to pull yourself back from the edge or take that step back if you kind of saw it coming? How did that process go for you in learning to control it a little bit more?
Well, a lot of it in the beginning before I actually, admitted I needed help. Step one, admit you need help. It could last hours, it could last days. I was just, it hurt. It hurt my work, because, it came through my job performance. Maybe it came through my attitude because, I was dealing with so much other stuff over here. I didn't want to be over here because, sometimes, I didn't even want to be around people. But, but as time went on, most of the time now it's, after a lot of help, I play guitar. So I do a lot of music, that's like you said, your music, the radio is your escape. My escape is the guitar. So I'll just, go play guitar forever. And soon I actually wrote a song for my son. And one day I'm going to play it on here for you. So that's coming up. I'm just waiting on my copyright to get back. So once it's, protected, I'll play it for you guys.
On the subject of that, how would you recommend for any loved ones that are out there listening when it is at that 12, 14, 15, how can a wife or a mother or a father or a brother or at times even a child, how can they navigate those episodes and what can they do that is helpful from your experience? What are things that were not helpful from your experience? And everyone is going to respond differently. Everyone's episodes and things like that are going to be different. So nothing that we say here is gospel by any means. These are just things that have or have not worked for him and his experiences. Things that could definitely be tried. They may be successful with someone else, they may not be. So take that however you will. These are just, again, examples that have worked in his, my, or our lives prior to.
Well, I think in the beginning, we talked about the 4th of July. If I went to a 4th of July event, I mean, the first 3 minutes of fireworks, I was just in panic mode. Um, Now, what my wife did, love her to death, God bless her. She actually did the best thing for me she could, was actually research PTSD, the effects of PTSD, and how she could help me with PTSD. So if you have a loved one in your life that has this, the best thing you can do is go try to understand. I remember being told by somebody that, PTSD ain't real. It's just a bunch of malarkey. And, that kind of upset me because I knew what I was feeling, and I knew what I'd
those
been
feelings
through.
are real.
And, you know, um, probably a few years later, the guy came back to me and said, "Man, I'm sorry, your PTSD is real." So, I mean, don't don't discount it. I mean, it's real. We are going through those emotions. Um, the best thing that worked for me was, my wife and my close friends that know me and know when I'm in those situations remind me, look around, where are you? You're not there. Look, you're at home. There's your trees. There's your truck. There's your house. You got to pull them back to where they're at right now. And sometimes that's hard. Sometimes it's easy. But when I really get into it, that's the best thing my wife can do for me is say, "Hey, look, where are you? Recognize where you are right now." And sometimes, most of the time, she's really sweet about it. But sometimes she has to say, "Hey, where are you at right now?"
Mm-hmm.
And if I can just stop and look, okay, I'm home. Okay, we're good. All right, everything's fine. And then I'd come out of it quicker. But it took me and someone saying, "Hey, where are you right now?" You know,
From your experiences, is physical touch a good thing or a bad thing?
um,
Like trying to hold your hand, trying to. I would not recommend, especially if it's new, for hugging, cradling, coddling, because there can be erratic movement involved, especially if it is PTSD that does stem from a combat veteran. But as far as like holding the hand, touching the leg, is that, does that kind of help you come to, or is that more of a don't touch me, fight or flight type thing?
you know, I guess for me, and I've heard stories of how some people are different. I wasn't. I was a more shut down fear, trying to figure out where that noise came from. I was in a totally different place in my mind. Couldn't see what's around me. Once my wife would get my attention, then she would like touch my leg, touch my shoulder, but nothing that would come across as aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. So, um, to be honest with you, my PTSD in the past was so bad. If I watched a war movie, my wife would go sleep on the couch because I wouldn't have bad dreams.
That's one thing I was going to try and kind of caveat into. Um, what is it like not only living with night terrors, but having a wife when you have night terrors, co-sleeping when you have night terrors? Um, how did you best navigate that, and what were some of the kind of do's and don'ts of that process for you?
You know, I, it's almost embarrassing to talk about. I mean, it really is because I won't say. I'll say that the last time that I had a nightmare in my sleep, I don't remember any of this, Dalton.
Mm-hmm.
My wife explained it all to me because the story went next morning. I'm always get up out of bed before she is, and I'm out working on the farm, and I be bopping in the back door. "Hey, babe, how you doing?" And she's just glaring at me. I'm like, "Did you not sleep good last night?" And she goes, "You not know what you did last night?" I'm like, "Mm-mm. What did I slept? What?" And so, and in my dream, I put her in a chokehold, and I don't know what happened after that. I don't know why I was using chokehold. I don't remember anything. And then that was the day that I said, okay, I got to take bigger steps to get help because I don't want to hurt those I love, and especially have no memory of it because, I mean, and that's, and I'm not the only one. And actually, I researched that. I mean, there's, lots of stories, and, you can research it yourself. There's a clinical name for it. I don't know what it is, where people do stuff while they're asleep and they don't remember any of it.
And night terrors are one of the most common side effects of PTSD, especially in veterans. So, I mean, I could definitely understand that being an embarrassing thing, but that is one of those things that you are definitely not alone in that. Like that is something that many people deal with, and many people have to work through to maintain a healthy relationship, to be able to sleep in the bed with your spouse. That is very important for a healthy marriage, and that can be a hard thing to overcome.
Well, yeah, but it was at that point that I knew that, I had to admit fully, and that's what I said first thing, guys, you got to admit it. Once you admit it fully and then commit to getting help.
And there's no shame in admitting that you have a problem. You're not weak by admitting that you have a problem, especially with PTSD. But I also understand, as a 6'6", 375-pound man sitting right here with you right now, that is the first time I have ever said out loud that I was diagnosed with PTSD. I have not talked about that with anyone.
Well,
I have not admitted that to anyone until I just told the entire world, or everyone that watches this video, and you.
But for me, having PTSD, knowing exactly what you went through, I fully understand. Now, people with PTSD will accept you sometimes faster than those without because they understand it. They live with it. So, but sorry that you're going through that. It's a terrible thing, but you and me, you have someone you can talk to anytime you need to, and we have talked.
Well, yeah, that's why when everything happened, I got out of the car, I separated myself, I called you. I didn't talk to anyone else. I didn't call anyone else. I called you because in my mind at that moment, I didn't need anyone else's help. I didn't need anyone else's words. Because no one would understand.
No.
The extent of that, the similarity of that to things that a combat veteran would have seen, that is something that, for me, I needed that familiarity. I needed that true understanding of, this is what happened. This is why it's bothering me. This is why I don't know what to do.
Right.
And so having that ability to turn and just sit there and bawl my eyes out on the phone, it's freeing. And that's another thing too with men. Crying does not make you weak. There is times where we all need to just let loose and cry. And especially when you're talking about PTSD or something like that, it is okay. It is recommended by clinical therapists, because for me personally, the way that my emotions work, when they build, there's one of two things that happen. I cry, and that is my emotional release. That is the way that I let everything go. Or I blow up violently. I have to release everything that I pin up, everything that I swallowed down, everything that I shoved down until I couldn't hold anything else. It's all got to come out now, and it comes out violently. I'm smart enough that I've always separated myself from anyone. I leave myself with inanimate objects, and I let it out in the manner I need to let it out. But that is the least healthy way that you can let that thing out. I will take crying 10 times out of 10 over breaking my knuckles on a wall or breaking my hand or releasing it in that physical, angry way. As a matured adult man who has been to therapy and understands the pros to it, 10 times out of 10, I'm just going to sit there and cry.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I use, if it caught me, and I used to go to the gym a lot, and I worked out a lot of frustration on weights, but if I'm not there, I pick the hardest job on the farm that took the most of my energy and muscles to do, and that's what I would go do, and I'd work out my frustrations, that way. I mean, and that's actually a good healthy release,
Mm,
because hey, I got something done on the farm. I can look back, oh, I got it done, instant gratification, and it gave me my alone time I needed. Because a
mm-hmm.
lot of time, people with PTSD, we just honestly just want to be alone
Yeah.
because we feel no one's going to understand. Um, and for all you veterans out there that I know it's hard for you. It was for me to talk to someone, a counselor that's never been there. I mean, us combat vets, we don't like to talk to people about combat that aren't combat vets because they don't get it. And it's not rude. Everyone in the military is important. I meet a lot of guys. Well, I didn't get to go to war. I was doing this job or that, and I'm like, well, you were just important to us as we were to you over there. I mean, everybody had a role to fill in the military, to make that big machine work. Um, but what my counselor did, she asked me to pick the worst thing that I saw in combat. And for 6 weeks straight, I had to come into that building and tell that story over and over to her. I mean, like, started off like once and then it went to 3 times and then 10 times. But I constantly repeated the story till it almost became, you know,
You almost numb
like
to
a
it.
TV show where it's just a rerun that's playing in your head and didn't affect me. Did it 100% work? No. Nor did I tell a worst story because I wasn't telling my worst story. Still not going to tell my worst story. So, I picked a lighter story and tried it. And, um, I don't want to tell you the story, but I can tell you that honestly, looking back, the big effect from that story has been lessened, but it's still a traumatic event.
Have you ever told that story before?
Not until I told it to her.
The worst one. You said you didn't tell the
No,
worst
no,
one.
I'll never tell my worst one.
Have you ever said it out loud to anyone?
No,
Do you think it would benefit you to do
it doesn't matter.
so?
It doesn't matter. There's some things combat vets will not talk about, and I don't know why. Um,
Seeing it, to me, it's weird as not being a combat vet, but I've worked with a few guys that have, and there's some people like you who are very protective of it, don't want to talk about it, won't talk about it. But then I've met some people who will just openly talk about it, like have no problem, just boom, 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 boom. And there was a guy that I worked with that did that, and I was just like, that with a straight face, just said what he said. And I guess since then, it's been a little weird for me how some people are very closed off with it, and then you have kind of the other side of people that are just blatantly open with it and will tell anyone everything at any point in time. Now, do you think that's just kind of a different way of coping, or
yeah, and that could be the way that guy copes with it. He makes light of the situation, wants to tell you about the situation. So instead of really letting it hit him or
mm-hmm.
her and deal with it, they just keep it on the outside of their heart. So dealing with, and doing some research, and I'm gonna look down at my phone for a minute because if not, I'll forget what to say in this. But there is actually a million veteran program. What this program is, and I did it years ago. So they're actually will take blood sample from every veteran, and they're actually finding out that PTSD has a lot to do with your genetics.
Really?
Yeah. That's why sometimes it can affect some people, not others, because they're finding out that it's genetically done, and they're actually looking for more veterans to go, be a part of this million, veteran program.
Interesting.
So, I mean, if they can find the genetic that causes it, then they may be able to find a better way to help people.
Interesting.
So I thought that was a really cool thing, and I think I probably 10 years ago I was at the VA in Fort Worth and said, "Here, take my blood." You know, and I get a newsletter every once in a while talking about it. So, if you want to be part of the cure, then it doesn't take but a little bit of blood out of your arm.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And then kind of exploring the non-military side of it too. There's so many things that have been linked to PTSDs, living through natural disasters, whether it be a tornado, a hurricane, an earthquake, things like that, have been linked to a lot of different PTSD cases. Kind of like you spoke on car accidents or just accidents in general. Um, it's become, I hate to say, more prominent in today's world than others, but acts of terrorism, be it whether it be a school shooting or something like that. Um, physical and or sexual assault obviously bears an extremely heavy cross when it comes to PTSD and things like that. Domestic violence, bullying, all different things that can have a lifelong effect on people and introduce itself in different ways. And I mean, I can say even that wasn't on that list, what I went through wasn't on that list. And I'm sure there's plenty of others that weren't on that list that aren't in any way less important because of it.
Well, I mean, it's hard to list it all. The list will be never ending.
We'd be here for an hour and a half just reading topics. But it's so universal. Like you don't have to have gone to war to have PTSD. And I feel like I kind of spoke on it earlier. I feel like that used to be a lot of people's impression. I feel like people only thought that veterans had PTSD because that's the only time that it was ever really talked about. Especially growing up, that was the only time I ever heard anyone talk about PTSD was when you were talking about veterans. Learning about wars in school, you talk about the lasting effects on those who lived through it, but that was the only time you ever heard about it, learned about it, talked about it. And now being an adult and being in a period in time where we as a human race are just getting not only more comfortable, but more, I would almost say, forcible with talking about our feelings and explaining what's going on and truly seeing the lasting causes and side effects of all of these different traumatic events, whether it be something from childhood or adulthood or whatever, even to the extent of childhood trauma that doesn't start showing itself until you're an adult. That's been a big thing that I've seen a lot more of lately is people almost kind of block it out or bury it deep down, and then as they become an adult for whatever reason it gets brought back up, something kind of triggers it, and now you're looking at PTSD for something that you've shoved down and haven't talked about or addressed for 15-20 years.
And that is very true. I mean, especially for men are really good about putting everything that happens to them in a nice, neat little box and just sticking it here. But, what happens, as you get older, you run out of places to stick boxes. And, and if you ever get to that point where you realize that you need the help, you want the help, you want to feel whole, happy, and healthy, you're going to seek the help. So, I mean, there may be more than two choices, but you honestly have two choices, especially, as for me, because I held it for so long and it just made me an angry guy.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, I had two choices. I got help, and there was this, a pretty big incident, that happened that, okay, Gary, you really do need help,
Mm-hmm.
Or I just stay that angry guy. And, because you do, I don't know what it is about PTSD that, just makes you feel angry a lot. It did for me anyway. I mean, some people's depression, some people's angry, some people's isolate, some people, that they go off the far end and become these huge adrenaline junkies. Um, you know, ride a motorcycle. People say, why do you ride a motorcycle? And I says, well, because, it's the only time I don't feel PTSD. I mean, it's freeing for me. But you have to find those things, um, you know, and,
One of the most important things being a safe space to talk about it. Whether it's a therapist, whether it's a group of friends, whether it's a family member, a spouse, whoever you have at your disposal that is willing to just sit down and listen. They don't even have to give advice, they don't need to reciprocate. All they need to do is just be there to listen because all you need to do is let it out. You've just got to get it out and talk about it and formulate it into words.
and you're correct there. I mean, because when I told my spouse what I went through, she has no clue what I went through.
Mm-hmm.
So it was great that she could just listen and try to understand. I knew she would never fully understand.
Yeah.
Just like if I told you, you would never fully
Mhm.
understand, but you listen. And, and there actually has to be an incredible amount of trust,
Oh, absolutely.
incredible amount of trust. 'Cause I think the first thing for me to discuss my PTSD and if I always felt if I told somebody what I'd done, then they'd look at me like, "Oh my God, you're a monster." Well, I didn't want to be a monster, so that's why you hold it in and like, I'm fine, everything's fine. Uncle Sam told me how to do it, so I did it. So, but it's that, it's the fear of being judged, I guess, and that's for a lot of people. No one wants to be judged ever. I mean, and um,
I feel like that
looked at
stems.
differently, or we don't want people to feel sorry for us. That's the last thing. I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I mean, I look back and I wouldn't change a thing about my military career, and if I could go back in time, I'd do it all over again. I love serving this country. I love the feeling, the pride in the uniform. um, but it's just, I guess they call us heroes, so we take on this hero, or heroes, or military men and women. um, we don't want to break that image
Mhm.
that people have us.
And the not wanting to feel like a monster, not wanting to be judged. I feel like that kind of stems a lot back to the comfort of, or willingness even to talk about it with another combat veteran, because they're gonna understand. They're never gonna call you a monster because they saw what you saw, they
Hmm.
experienced what you experienced, they heard it, they felt it, they lived it. And so I feel like that, as someone who didn't go through that, I feel like that's a completely different kind of comfort and understanding and relief to be able to talk about that with someone who is going to understand it, never going to judge you, never going to look at you different because of what you told them, even though the people that you loved wouldn't either. That's something that I feel like most people could never be convinced of.
It's true. But the important thing to this podcast, and it's probably about time for us to wrap it up, is this is PTSD Awareness Month. And, from one veteran to the rest of you guys out there, I love you all. Love my veterans. Um, one thing I want you guys to admit, that heroes get wounds too.
And don't be afraid to help those wounds heal. You don't have to be the big burly man that just lets time eat away at it and it'll heal itself. Go to the doctor, get the stitches, put the antibiotic ointment on it, bandage it up. And metaphorically, what I mean when I say that is go talk about it. Go see a therapist. I know I've said it in a previous episode, but in today's day and age, therapy is so available. You don't have to go talk about it in person. You don't have to sit in a shrink's office, get uncomfortable, get sweaty, because that is something that a lot of people just don't jive with. And that is okay. You can do it over the phone, you can do it over Zoom, you can do it in the comfort of your own home, your vehicle, however, wherever. A lot of different price points for all of that, to where cost really isn't an issue for seeking help. I know I've spoken on that as well, but just get help. And I will say this, and I'm sure he will agree with me: if you need help and you are not in a position to obtain that help yourself, reach out. We would be more, that is what this company is for. That is why we did this, to prevent any other family from having to go through what our family went through, to prevent suicides, to raise mental health awareness, to raise PTSD awareness. Reach out. We will do whatever we can to assist you in getting help, whether you're local to us or whether you're across the country. I will take the time to find help near you. We will find a way to make the payments work. Now, I'm not saying we can afford to pay for everyone's therapy, but we will do whatever is in our power to help anyone that needs it. That is what we're trying to do. That is the message we're trying to send. We just want to save one more person. We want to help one more person. And again, we want to prevent any other family from ever having to feel what we felt.
Because you're not worthless, you're not unimportant, and you're loved by somebody. And that's what's important. So stay strong and you need us, reach out. We will help you find somebody that can help you.
Absolutely. Again, I'm Dalton. This is Gary. If anyone needs anything, reach out to us at any point. You are important, you matter, and you are loved. Thank you all. Have a blessed one.
Good night, folks.